is not to, erase it from a record. I mean, obviously, I do believe that police officers and prosecutors should be held to a higher standard, and so that is actually just the normal course of how a case is handled. But we do take it seriously. He is charged with 2 felonies. Under the law, the 2 felonies are both probation eligible, and so that would be a normal thing to do with a case like that, is to send it to EDC, but that doesn't mean it's going to be wiped off his record.
This is really egregious allegations. I mean, it's not
Yes.
just drug use. This is, taking drugs while on duty, using them. You said you hold police officers to a higher standard, but this is the same course that every case takes. Can you just kind of explain that?
Well, it's procedurally what the cases go through is cases of this nature go to early disposition court, but that's just the normal procedure. That doesn't mean it's going to be wiped off of his record. So, we will take a look at it. I also have to look at the fact that while they're held to a higher standard, do we treat them differently than other people who have committed similar crimes? The fact that he committed it on duty, I understand, is a factor, but it is an open case. We're taking it seriously, and we are prosecuting it.
What can you say about this case and the allegations in this case?
Well, it's an open case, so I can't say much, but what I will say is we take it seriously.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Has the governor signed the requisition for the extradition process of Lori Vallow? And is the time frame still 3 to 4 months for the extradition?
So the governor will have the documents that she needs to sign delivered to her this afternoon, because they've all been prepared and completed. I'm hopeful that we will have something by the end of the year, but you can check back with us today. We can confirm that was delivered, and then we can. I would refer you to the governor's office after that.
Okay, and on the docket for Lori Vallow, before the case was sealed, the charge specifies first-degree premeditated murder, but as you know, this case is an attempted murder charge.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just an online error?
I can't speak to that. What I can say is we've charged 2 counts of conspiracy.
What can you tell us about the pending trial against S.A. Williams, the man accused of shooting Phoenix Police Officer Northland?
Yeah, as you know, I'm very familiar with that case because I actually responded to the scene when that happened. What has happened in that case is there has been a change in defense attorneys, and because there are so many witnesses involved, that's going to delay the case somewhat. There is a trial date right now set in October. That may not be realistic given the change of attorneys, but I know that they are actively working on preparing the case for trial.
Do you know anything about why the attorney changed?
I believe there was a conflict of interest, and I can't speak to what that is.
Do you have any update on the case that your office furthered, the allegations against James Estep, and accused of serious rape charges of multiple women?
Yeah, the Estep case is still with the Mesa Police Department to complete some further investigation that we requested. There's also some information that we're pursuing on our end. We're in constant contact with Mesa about that case, and so it's being actively worked.
Fair to say it's a high priority for your office?
Very high priority.
Could you tell us a little more about what's next in that Vallow extradition process that you started about there? What happens next? You're going to deliver paperwork to the governor, then what happens next?
Well, the governor has to sign the governor's requisition warrant, and then that will be communicated to the authorities in Idaho. And, Ms. Vallow has the option of either agreeing to the extradition. She can oppose the extradition. So that will be the next step to see what happens there, and then she will be transported here, and the case will proceed.
When you said hopeful that we'll have something by the end of the year, what procedurally step do you mean you hope we'll be at?
I'm hopeful that we have the governor's warrant signed and conveyed to Idaho, and then we'll find out, and hopefully find out what her position will be on extradition.
Okay, so I'm not trying to be difficult, but when do you foresee this person actually being prosecuted in this jurisdiction?
I'm hopeful it's by the end of the year, but
Oh,
we'll
that-
see.
that is
Yeah,
what you- okay,
yeah,
all
we'll
right.
see.
That's
Yeah,
what you- Okay, so
Yeah.
you hope that
I'm hopeful, but
they would be here and, okay.
I've also worked in the criminal justice system long enough to understand that things do happen. But, you know, we're doing our role. Yeah.
What's the status of the charges against the couple accused of abusing a puppy in Scottsdale? Name was Lester Paul Richmond and Heather Auditor.
My understanding is that that is still being, the investigation is being sewn up. We actually, if you remember this from last year, hired a statewide known expert in animal abuse, and I know that she is working with Scottsdale PD, and Scottsdale PD is working the case as well to put that case together.
Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
We've seen a trend with minors and crimes, committing crimes. Where do prosecutions stand behind these teens? Do you think there should be harsher consequences so they don't become repeat offenders once they become adults?
You know, that's a really good question, especially in light of the earlier statements I made about gun crime. You know, we are seeing a huge number of minors in possession of guns, and you know, conveying to them, you can't get a bullet back. You know, once you fire that gun, it's come to my attention what is being done in juvenile court, and I understand that the purpose of juvenile court is rehabilitation, and I agree with that. But I think it needs to be effective, and so I'm actually going to be meeting with the administrative offices of the courts in the next week or so to discuss what an appropriate handling of those cases is, because what we don't want is for them to then turn 18 and then it's an entirely different ballgame as far as the impact on their life. So I want it to be an effective, not overly punitive, but an effective rehabilitative response for juveniles in possession of guns.
On the issue of ghost guns, are you seeing a lot of ghost guns here in the valley?
I couldn't give you a percentage on that. Mostly when I'm looking at cases such as when officers are shot at, it's not a ghost gun. It's usually a stolen gun or a gun that can't be traced back to that individual. The bottom line is the trend is a felon that is in possession of a gun. And it's an overwhelming correlation that we're seeing there.
Follow up
Jimmy.
on the juvenile question from a colleague. Have you seen a rise in juvenile firearm charges since the pandemic?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that, like how much, or what do you ascribe this phenomenon?
We could get you some numbers if you wanted them on that. We are definitely seeing that more juveniles are in possession of guns, and obviously that's of great concern to us. And as I was saying, you know, this is the time of their life that we need to address that, because once they get into adult court, very different consequences.
Are there models or something like programs that you could work on that would be either for first-time offenders, or is there any kind of talks for any kind of development of something like that?
That's what I want to talk to the administrative office of the courts about looking at if there have been successful models across the country to address possession of guns by juveniles. And we want something that is research-backed to address this, because it's a growing problem.
Is this something that you're hearing from colleagues in other jurisdictions as well about this group, this age group?
It's something I'm hearing from people that work in this office.
Okay,
Yes.
I hear you, but I mean, do you think it's a specific phenomenon here in Maricopa County, or are you hearing from other colleagues, in other parts of the state or country? Is this part of like a trend?
Based on what I'm seeing across the country, I would say it is a trend across the country. In fact, if you look at just general crime, it's not a charging issue. We are seeing more juveniles with guns.
And again, no real thoughts on what might be driving this at this point?
Well, there's been an uptick in crime nationally. And I mean, we're seeing reductions in numbers of police. I think that certainly plays a role in it. I do think COVID played a role in it. So I think there's a number of factors that have come to bear, that we're seeing this kind of increase. But nevertheless, we have to get control of it so that it doesn't take over our community.
You mentioned the trend with officer-involved shootings that in most cases, this is a felon who obtains a gun. In the Williams case, we know he was a convicted felon. I know there's been federal charges for other guns that were found in his possession or in his car when the shooting happened. But the issue of how he got the gun used in the shooting, can you share anything about that? And do you believe that was obtained illegally?
Well, yes, I mean, he was a convicted felon. In fact, he was on probation. What I would do is refer you to the U.S. Attorney's Office, because while we're prosecuting the individual for shooting the officer, they prosecuted the individuals who had provided the guns to the individual.
So they're handling that, because there is the gun that was used in the shooting, that hasn't been identified. But they were guns just that were in the car in the apartment that the charges federally have been filed.
The U.S. Attorney prosecuted individuals for providing guns to this individual. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Shifting topics a little bit, what is your response to a planned constitutional amendment that would allow abortions in Arizona up to 24 weeks of pregnancy?
As a county attorney, I will respond as a county attorney. As a county attorney, I have made it clear that I will follow the laws decided by the legislature and governor or the people. My personal opinion on that is not the issue here. It's that I will follow the law. But what I would say to people is that they need to read closely any initiative that they're voting for. I think a lot of people are not aware that once an initiative is passed into law, that it is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to modify or change. And so it's not just the title. People need to read the text of the bill.
Last question. Is your office looking into any possible charges for the Maricopa County Democratic Party over claims of fraudulent mailers involving nearly $25,000?
Well, as you know, we don't investigate, we prosecute, and if there is an investigation going on and it is submitted to us, we will certainly look at it.
Good enough.
Okay?